Thanks for listening to the People, Not Titles podcast. We are brought to you by our great sponsors, Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results. Hello, this is Steve Kaempf from the People, Not Titles podcast, and I am so pleased today to have Faisal Hoque on. Faisal has written Transcend, your 11th book, Faisal?
10th book.
It's your 10th book. So Faisal has written 10 books. He's a Wall Street Journal and USA Today #1 bestseller. The accolades for the span of work that you've done, Faisal, is immense. And so I don't want to cover that all for the sake of time, but we'll give everyone the places where they can reach you if they haven't heard of you already. Faisal, I first want to say thanks for spending time with us today. And I'm really excited. I was privileged enough to get an advanced copy of your book, Transcend, Unlocking Humanity in the Age of AI. And I read it over a weekend. I spent a lot of time reading it, and it was great. It was engaging. I think like a lot of our viewers and a lot of our listeners, they're not, the large percentage of them are not, immensely engaged in AI, certainly not leveraging it the way they could and should and will need to perhaps even. So I'm excited about this conversation. The accolades on the book are already coming in, and I just want to read a couple of them, which I think they're really unique. One said, there are plenty of books on AI and even on the human-AI relationship, but you will not find one more thoughtful and useful philosophically than this. If it doesn't make you think carefully about how you're using AI, you didn't read it carefully enough. And then it talks about how you offer practical and thought-provoking approaches to unlocking the potential of AI in a safe and responsible way. And it also says, while some predict that AI is making human thought obsolete, Faisal Hoque demonstrates how crucial human reflection remains and how you brilliantly guide us into the future of human-AI collaboration, showing how it can elevate our personal and professional lives. And so amazing, and I concur with all of that. I'm inspired by reading it, Faisal, so fantastic.
Thank you. You couldn't be more generous and kind. I appreciate it. So I'm excited to have this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So working through it, I think the first point you make, Faisal, is that the AI genie is out of the bottle. The toothpaste is out of the tube. And why don't you talk about that just a little bit?
Look, every day something new is happening, right? So, when we started to think about writing this book, that was almost like 3 years ago, and we were just kind of seeing this emergence of large language model, some natural language interfaces, like consumer-centric chat GPT type of stuff. But since then, if you just look at last, 24, 48 hours of news, we already have this two System 1 and System 2 architectural design and chip out of NVIDIA that allows you to kind of manifest the virtual AI into a humanoid robots that will learn from recognizing pattern of human interactions, right? So, it's already moved from virtual to physical manifestation, right? So we're basically creating a new species, if I can use that term, a digital species that probably going to be a lot smarter than you and I.
Yeah. So, Faisal, I think you make the brilliant point early, which is that we cannot think properly about AI unless we think properly about key philosophical questions. So talk just a little bit about that, if you might.
Sure. I'll make it very pragmatic and practical following just last 48 hours. So, part of that announcement, already like Yum Brand decided that they're going to use this humanoid, robotics type of entities for order taking in Taco Bell. Also GM incorporating these sort of technology for self-driving car. So if you start now having self-driving cars and you have fast food
Automated order takers.
order takers and the kids who had their first jobs in McDonald's and Taco Bell's and Jack in the Box, what happens, right? So this is the philosophical question. So are we outsourcing humanity to a new species? Are we are we forgetting that there is a economic and psychological and social impact when you look at over automation and over connection between the over automation and joblessness and social behavioral pattern, right? So that's the philosophical debate. Now take it one step farther. There's a spiritual and kind of a very deep humanity centric conversation, in the sense that if you think about the fact that, if you look at even simple thing as Maslow's hierarchy, I mean, we may be, all fulfilled because we have now food at the table. There's abundance of food, and we have shelter over our head. But you're not really, we don't have any vehicle to self-actualization of our purpose, because it's taken over by some other species, right? So what
Yes.
happens to humanity, right? So that's really the debate, right? How far is too far, and how much is too much, and just because we can, should we, right? So that's really what the philosophical debate about it, debate is all about.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they hear about AI and they hear about robots and people taking their jobs and all that, the first thing is fear, right? Fear
Yeah.
of loss, fear of losing control, fear of being dominated by some robots or whatever this is. But I think your approach of with AI is actually to lean into humanity and lean into AI at the same time. And that's a delicate balance. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I mean, so let's take the same example. And you remember when we were initially talking, and we are talking about the how do we serve humanity? I mean,
Absolutely.
I recently lost my mother from dementia and other complication, and I was thinking that,
Sorry.
and I was thank you, and I was kind of like the caregiver for her for a while, and it's very taxing as a caregiver, because and then when she went to nursing home, she often will fall back on our native language, which was Bengali, and most of the caregiver didn't understand Bengali. So I was thinking that, okay, well, here's an example of uses of humanoid robot that could be a caregiver that would be much more uh, tolerant and understanding. So you could pass that empathy depending on the use case and elevate humanity to the next level. So I'm optimistic about those kind of application. Or think about like drug discovery. Or my son is a cancer survivor, and I often think about, okay, where can you use enhance the life cycle and drug discovery cycle, utilizing the vast computing power of AI to do that, or really pinpoint what works for what kind of patient in a much more accurate, with much more accuracy, if we can do that sort of data collection. So it all depends where you want to use it, and there's obviously, we're
Absolutely.
going to get into personal example of usage momentarily, but it's what really boils down to: what's your purpose, and does your purpose is going to serve you and your fellow humanity in a better way, versus just focus on efficiency and profit. That's really the question.
Yeah, and Faisal, two things brought to mind here is, there's a large percentage of people, they don't like their jobs, but yet they're afraid that someone's going to take over the job they don't like. And so it really speaks to, they probably don't like their job because they're not fulfilling or living their purpose. And so now here comes something to set them free to actually see their purpose, pursue it, have time perhaps. But the fear is, now I have to actually look and find my purpose and have to think about the bigger things in life, as opposed to just doing some of the tasks that we don't like to do.
Absolutely. I mean, look, for and the reality is that this kind of technology can be a great partner, right? So,
Absolutely.
and the best users of this kind of technology are the people who are a domain expert in a particular area. So, if you are a researcher, you will become a better researcher. Like for
Yes.
example, before hopping on to our call, I was thinking, is there an economic theory that shows the connection between over automation versus unemployment versus the market uncertainty, and what do we know over the last from last 300 years of history, human history? It took me literally to pull that up, in like half an hour, or less than that, 15 minutes,
Yes.
and like
Yes.
dissecting it in multiple ways, right? So whereas, I would have gone to the library and, looked at this or do a Google search or whatever the case may be. And so now if I want to write an article on that, I could write my article based on what just I discovered in
Yes.
15 minutes versus days and days of work. So as a result, I'm much more efficient and it's making me more productive, right? So this is a simple example of how it can make you better, right? And so
Absolutely.
so that's what we need to focus on if you want to be, quote unquote, transcend yourself,
Yes.
to your highest possibilities. And here's the other thing I will share with you from a philosophical point of view. Adversity and uncertainty actually allows you to be more creative. So
Mm.
if you are fearful of losing your job, that's a fear and potential adversity that you may face. So get ready and start preparing yourself in terms of how do you leverage all these things, which by the way, you don't need to be a programmer, you don't need to be a tech wizard to start
Absolutely.
using this, because whole notion of large language model is natural language interface, right? So
Hmm.
you can go and have a conversation now, and if you say, okay, look, these are my skill set and I want to hone my skill set, you have the opportunity to learn.
Yeah, I thought it was fascinating, Faisal. You talked about losing your mother. Actually lost my dad in very similar fashion, dementia and all that. And many weeks after my father passed, I still dialed his phone to hear his voice and to get his voicemail. And I thought it was fascinating how you talked about, being able to accumulate the texts, maybe social media or whatever it is, and actually still have a kind of a comprehensive memorial or even resource of a loved one that has passed on.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's already tools that will take the photos of from your iPhone and create a nice little a photo album like we used to
Yes,
do in the past. Take the pictures and create a photo album. You don't need to
yes,
do that. You can do that in 10 seconds, right? So
absolutely.
so those things are those are obviously very consumer emotional centric application. And if you look at the whole the landscape of AI. I mean, it's anything from the consumer technology to enterprise technology to large scale government technology. There's a wide variety of application and platform and architecture that's already available to make us thousand time better or thousand time worse, right? So you can also
Absolutely.
start thinking, okay, am I outsourcing everything that we do? From like, what movie should I see? Well, I don't want to think about it because Netflix is telling me.
Right.
Algorithmically, it knows my
You'll like this
viewing
because you
preference.
watch that.
Exactly. Or you should look at this news caption because you're interested in things that are happening with AI, right? So, but maybe I should not listen to that. Maybe I should look at something else, right?
Yes.
So you could get very isolated and very manipulated, if I can use that word,
Yes.
by these algorithms and these engines.
So that's where the awareness comes in and the consciousness to know who you are, what your purpose is, inner knowing of, and wisdom, the gates, the kind of spiritual gates that you have and sensitivities. And it actually is going to probably help us if we're going to be a victim to all that and just follow like mindlessly the algorithm, that's one thing. But if it forces us to be stronger, to resist the algorithm and to really think about things and to pause and reflect and to make conscious choices, we could actually be accelerated in that manner as well, couldn't we?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I mean, the reason I kind of, anchored this around philosophy, and it's not, if you, as you've seen, it's a
Yes.
philosophical tenet from many different culture and many different era, and but if I just use the key, which I'm very drawn to, the Eastern philosophy and Buddhist philosophy, the whole notion of devotion and detachment. Devotion in Sanskrit is sadhana, and detachment, the idea of devotion and detachment is that you want to be devoted that basically enlightens you, and you want to be detached from the things that distract you
Yes.
from the potential to reach your highest potential, right? So if you think from that, so if you start outsourcing yourself and you start outsourcing your critical thinking and your ability to kind of hone your living up to your fullest fullest potential, then that's what you're going to become, right? So I mean, there's a middle path, right? So I mean, any
Absolutely.
extreme that's why it's called extreme. You can be addicted to be to you can say, okay, I want to be in good health, or you can be addicted to gym and you're spending like your 7 hours in gym or play video game all day long. Those are all addiction, right? So AI
Absolutely.
could be also very addictive. Like you could have a relationship with a AI persona and have no human communication, right? So
Yes.
and you can do that, or you
Yes.
can decide that you want to have better human communication. So and you kind of cultivate those human relationship in a much better way than you used to because you're learning from all this stuff.
Yeah, one of the things that I found really helpful is just, I would say, an AI novice, Faisal. First off, that your encouragement that you don't have to be an expert in AI to leverage AI massively.
Yeah,
The second thing is, and at the end, we'll talk about, kind of the pathway to you setting up a game plan to leverage AI, however big or however small you want to. But I thought your metaphors were really good. The metaphor of the mother and child and the DNA to get people to understand the relationship with AI. So can you talk just a little bit about that?
sure. Look, I mean, unlike any other technology, this is very different in the sense that this is a active technology, if I can use that term,
Yes.
versus other technologies that we have used. Like, for example, if you look at your, I don't know, Outlook, your mailbox, right? I mean, that's
Yep.
like a passive technology where you put in your date and schedule, and it's there, and it reminds you that that 5 minutes before the meeting you have a meeting. This is kind of like a passive type of technology.
Yes.
AI is going to be an active participant, and it should be your partner, right?
Like
So
a co-creator with you almost, right?
exactly, and if you think about the enterprise AI, they're going to be your co-worker because you will have AI agents that you're going to actually allocate task in a workflow, right? So, for example, you can say, "I'm going to do this, but my AI agent is going to do all this other mundane stuff, and it's going to come back to me for approval," right?
Hmm.
So it's like how old days used to they do maybe come up with a file and then you passed on your coworker, they reviewed it. It's you're going to have a AI agent to do that, right? So
Yes.
so in that context, it's a partner. So if you think about AI as a partner, then you have to say, okay, what do I want to allocate? How do I want to train? How do I want to shape the behavioral pattern? So when I say child and parent, today it's a child because you're teaching it, right?
Yes.
Sooner or later, because its computing power and its connectivity and its ability to learn
It's
and
generative.
siphon
Yeah.
it's going to be you're going to become the child.
The People Not Titles podcast is brought to you by Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results.
That's that's
Yeah.
where it gets dangerous in the sense that Well, if you're the child, then what happens, like you were talking about your father, or I was talking about my mother,
Yes.
I mean, you become not just dependent, you get controlled by it, right? So
Mhm.
here's another philosophical tenet. Do we really want to do that? And how do we protect ourselves from not becoming controlled by these things?
Absolutely. And I think you cover that well. Another thing that struck me was how you pointed out that this isn't the first time humanity has faced these kind of watershed moments. We had the printing press, we had the steam engine, we had the web, and we all, there were all these kind of fears associated with those moments as well. But I think we can all look back at all of them and say that, these were monumental for raising awareness, consciousness, education, and capabilities of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. And and we've only gotten better. We have better quality of life. We have less people with diseases. We have more people who are employed, et cetera, et cetera, right?
Yes.
But one thing I will say is that, you know, I mean, I think within next 3, 5, 10 years, we'll know what humanity has done with this to take us. What is unknown about this is that we have never created anything that are smarter than ourselves, right?
Mhm.
This is the first time. If you talk about printing press or steam engine or
They
even
were
the
printing the
web,
words that other humans wrote.
right, and it didn't have cognitive power. It didn't have the ability to compute and come up with decisions, and it certainly didn't have like a physical manifestation that mimics us,
Yes.
right, with
Yes.
a collective consciousness. So this is where it's very different. And what will happen with it, it will depend what we do, right?
Yes.
And this is why, as you wrote in Transcend, we take a very middle path, and we have developed this two framework where we say we need to be radically optimistic and radically explorative so that we can explore everything and anything that this type of technology can bring to the table. But we have to be deeply concerned about humanity and care about humanity in order to guardrail from a technological point of view, from a governance and legislative and legal point of view, but also from an ethical point of view, right? So this is the unknown. I don't think anybody can say what will happen. And by the way, not to mention this is highly democratized, right? Meaning anybody can access it. So
Yeah.
think about like nuclear energy, which is a monumental technological advancement, but it's very controlled. I mean, not all of us can just go and access nuclear energy, right? I mean,
Yes.
or think
Absolutely.
about like pharmaceutical industry, right? You and I cannot just go and open up a pharmaceutical, a factory in our
Stand. Yeah.
backyard.
At the
Yeah,
market, you have a pharmaceutical stand.
right. And if we did, we would be illegal drug dealers, right? So,
Right.
but that's not the case with AI. But it has potential to do a lot more harm or a lot more good. So this is where the guardrail, both from legislation, ethical, as well as the technological guardrail that comes in play, and it has to be in place. This is
Yeah.
not
It's
talking against innovation. It's actually managing innovation so that it really makes the impact that it should.
Yeah, Faisal, it makes me think that we are what you're saying is that humanity should be concerned about the actual heart of the collective, because the heart of collective will be reflected in our use of AI. Is that true?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely, because it's a interconnected. I mean, look, humanity is interconnected, but although we don't
absolutely.
always recognize or
We
or
don't want to
or,
accept
or
it either.
accept it either, right? But we're all interconnected, and the planet is interconnected, right?
Yes.
And AI is certainly literally hardware interconnected in the sense that we're talking about, in the end of the day, bunch of hardware and software that are connected via the internet infrastructure, and these are basically IoTs,
Hmm.
the Internet
Yes.
of Things, right? So it's literally interconnected. That's collecting the collective data of the humanity and feeding back to us. So it is a reflection of the entire humanity. So when you're doing a search and telling, let's say you go to one of the large language model and asking, okay, tell me what is self-awareness or know thyself means, and give me example of three different philosophical tenet. It's literally giving you those from Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy, and spiritual belief system all at once. That is
Yes.
the reflection, right? So now
Yes.
you can manipulate that by saying, well, don't show the Western philosophy, just show the
Right.
Eastern philosophy, right? So this is where that people who are quote unquote builders of these large language model and the hardware infrastructure and the network infrastructure, they have to play ethical role so that they don't, manipulate what it can be judged by them, what's good and what's correct. It should be totally free and open if you really talk from that perspective, right?
Yeah. That's interesting. When reading your book, there's a lot of, I think in the consciousness right now, separate from AI, there is a further awareness of how much our thoughts actually impact the realm, right? With quantum physics and light, and how we only see 1% of what's actually happening around us and all this kind of thing. So much of what we're thinking and much of what we're doing has more of an impact than we even know. And I think with AI, this is just going to compound exponentially these thoughts, these feelings, these intentions, and all that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, when you bring all this together, right, it has a highest potential because of the fact that you're basically learning from collection of people, right?
Yes.
And collective divergent opinion and divergent experience, and it's all converging in one place, right? And you
Yes.
can maintain a almost like unbiased opportunity to learn, but it also creates a opportunity to manipulate and bias. Like, I'll give you,
Absolutely.
I mean, it doesn't have to be intentional. Let's talk about unintentional bias. So for
Yes.
example, if you say, look, I'm looking for data source in terms of impact of a particular cancer in a particular age group. But let's say the data was collected only on people who are 40 something or 50 something, I'm not going to get that data. And I can make a decision based on that data because maybe I'm treating a 18-year-old, right?
Right.
So this is where unintentional bias comes in play.
Yes, absolutely. So getting now down kind of to the practical, I think, we've spoken of some big ideas, Faisal here, but I think for the person that reads this book and says, I just want to know what I can do. I thought your formula, decide the goals, educate yourself, evaluate what you need, and prepare to use AI. I think that those things and the kind of the steps and the pathway that you give us here, I think is really powerful. Maybe just talk just a minute about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we basically developed two framework. One is called Open, which is to explore what are the possibilities and how you can leverage this, and then also another framework called Care, that basically allows you to kind of do the risk analysis
Yes.
and protect yourself, right? So the Open starts with outlining your purpose and what do you want to be
Yes.
in terms of when you want to grow up, right? And then
Hmm.
figure out, okay, which AI technology do I want to be partnering with, and who can also human partners that fits into that ecosystem and move me forward. And then you can experiment with that and navigate your progression of growth, right?
Yes.
The care starts with figuring out what is the catastrophic scenario. So, for example, as an individual, you can say, okay, my catastrophic scenario is that I outsource everything to AI and I have no value in terms of
Hmm.
critical thinking, and I'm totally dependent on that. Well, do I want that or not? If I don't want that, then I have to look at what are my risks and then kind of progress accordingly, right? So those are the practical steps, and there are guidelines and examples and questions that we obviously put in the book, and I'm not, this is not the only framework, and there's a reason why we call it framework, because there are a lot of best practice methodology that we kind of embedded and
Absolutely.
and lend, kind of leaned on to
Yes.
come up with this framework so that it's very AI centric.
Yeah, and we have a lot of real estate agents that watch our podcast, and people in the real estate space, attorneys, whatever it is. And for the most part, they're solopreneurs. And I thought it was really great that you had this example of a solopreneur and how they started their journey on AI, how they implemented how they leveraged it. And then you also went into big business, so it's certainly applicable there. And then you went into government as well, and
Right.
the things that need to be concerned there. Um, Talking about the persona, that was a new concept for me too. Maybe just share a little bit about that, just the thought behind that and the power of that.
Yeah, look, I mean, it comes from this notion of partnership because, as I said, this is an active technology, and
Yes.
and so you have to kind of decide, and especially with the emergence of agentic AI and emergence of, pretty soon we're going to see this, the artificial general intelligence, which is really have full cognition level where it will start like feeling, acting just like another human being. So you have to decide what persona do you want to use in the context of your life and your work. All right. So
Hmm.
if you say, okay, I want a research partner and a research assistant, then you use and define that particular thing as the research persona, right? And or you can say, okay, I want a personal assistant, not a
Yes.
researcher, but who goes and maintains my calendar and reaches out to people with email follow up. Then that's a assistant. So these are different kind of roles.
Yes.
Personas
It's
are
almost like
basically
writing a job description and
exactly,
saying, this is the job
exactly,
I'm looking for, and how close can I get with my AI partner to actually do this job?
exactly, and it
And
focuses
that's a
just
really
on that.
practical step for people to
Yes.
take.
And it's focused. You're going to get more out of it versus trying to make anything and everything. And there are specific tools that are already out there in the market, from whether that's like helping with your writing, or
Yes.
creating your PowerPoint presentation, proposal, interacting with your customer. There's already like hundreds of tools that popped up in the
Yeah, I mean,
market.
even as something as simple as a podcast, right? There's Pod Squeeze, where it takes a look at your podcast. It gives you the show notes. It gives you blogs. It gives you what the greatest quotes, all the various things, and then chops them up in the videos and all that. So that is my podcast partner in many ways, is
Yeah,
my AI partner. And so there you go. It's
right.
a perfect example. Um, I also thought in relation to a solopreneur, big business, or government actually executing, I thought the power of prototyping was really a brilliant concept, Faisal. So maybe just talk just a little bit about that
Yeah.
and
So
how that
it
can help
it
a company.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's really, and you can do that even individually, right? So when
Absolutely.
you're saying, look, I want to have a persona, and you said, look, and I want to experiment with a bunch of different tools or platform or concept, to see what suits me best, right? So, for example, you have a podcast, so does thousand other people, as an example,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you have a tool that does. Maybe you want your a prototype with how much is your reel, if I can use that example. How
Yes.
long is it, right? So
Yes.
that's how you customize or make it unique, or a particular template,
Hmm.
or format, right? So these are the
Yes.
things you want to experiment with and come up with a prototype. And once that works, and I'm using a very simple example that most people can
Absolutely.
understand, but then you can say, okay, well, I can now roll it out, right? And
Hmm.
based on whatever worked, whatever didn't work, right? Because
Yes.
um, um, otherwise, what will happen? You will just keep experimenting, and never get to execution, or you'll be executing without knowing what are the different type of options that are available to you.
Yeah, and I think, what I'm reminded of in your prototyping example, where the steps are, I believe, observation, idea generation, prototyping, testing. That's something I have to do. It's not
Yes.
something AI is going to do. So when I have my purpose and when I have the destination I want to get to, that's when I start thinking that way and leveraging AI to get to that higher ground myself, not to get to not get let AI get to the higher ground and leave me behind.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, look, in many ways, you still can be in the driver's seat, right? So
Yes.
that depends on who you are and what you want to do and how you want to leverage. There's uh, time will tell where it all goes, right? But there's
Yes.
an opportunity where it could be a great equalizer because it's so democratized, or it could be a major differentiation because people with highest access to these tools and technology is going to get the highest benefit, right?
Yeah, it could
Or
be
you
the
can
great
argue
separator. It could be the great
great
separator,
separator,
right?
right?
Yeah.
And but on the other hand, you can say, well, if it's so cost effective and everybody has access, so both you and I have the exact equal opportunity to learn, to grow, explore, be entrepreneurial, whatever the case may be.
So at the end of the book, Faisal, you talk about human alchemy. And I had this thought before I got your book about how relationships really allow for alchemy in the sense that the spark between two, the way that you put up with each other's faults and celebrate each other's wins, helps you both kind of get to higher ground if you have love at the core of it. And it seems to me like you're landing there too, in
Yeah.
the sense of that this can be a love accelerator if we allow it to be.
Yeah, and it's a love for your craft, is love for your purpose, is love for your calling, right? So
Hmm.
because you can create, you can actually now have an unbiased partner or
Hmm.
set of partners that allows you to push you forward with that more easily in many ways than a emotional human being that is very reactive, right? And that's where the equal opportunity comes in, right?
Yes.
And but
So yeah, you throw the quote in there from Nietzsche. It says, "Whoever must be a creator also destroys." Talk about what you were thinking there in the heart, in the spirit of the book.
we already kind of talked about that in the sense that, take that example of humanoid robot replacing these kids or, the entry level workers,
Hmm.
and should we do that? And if we do that, what does it do to the economy? What does it
Yes.
do to with over automation? Or should we
Yes.
take a use case where maybe it could be a caregiver for Alzheimer patient, right? Or we are now forming relationship with this synthetic artificial species by neglecting our human relationship, and we're creating even more isolation, and we're kind of pouring our joys and sorrows into something that's not confrontational, because it is only through confrontation and adversity that we grow. It's not,
Yes.
when everything is easy, convenient, and successful, and you don't actually learn as much, right? So
Right.
so
That's
this
true.
is the fear, and then
Yes.
top of all that, if you have a species that is a lot smarter than you are, which we have never encountered in human history, then our why would they kind of support us versus us supporting them, right? So
Yes.
so there's that power dynamic shifts, right? So what happens then, right? So those are the questions that I don't think anybody sitting in 2025 can answer. Even like, you saw that I started the book with a quote from Jeffrey Hinton, which a lot of people consider him as the one of the fathers of AI. He has a lot of these dire prediction what will happen if we're not careful, right?
Yes.
So I don't think anybody can tell you what will happen, but that is our collective destiny and our collective responsibility.
Yeah, and Faisal, isn't there, speaking from a spiritual standpoint, if we can get all the answers from AI, um, we might stop trying to tap in to that wisdom from God from above that is even above AI, right?
Sure.
And so there is an opportunity for humanity to be cut off from the spiritual power because they have fallen in love with this power.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you remember in the book we talked about, what shapes our belief system and thought process. It's language. So
Hmm.
if we are outsourcing our language to a separate being, then you are no longer shaping it, it's shaping you, because
Hmm.
language is how we communicate, right? So
Hmm.
language, I don't mean literally linguistic, it's the voice, that's
Hmm.
coming from this engine, right? So it's with that language we influence, we shape, if since you're talking about spirituality and God. I mean, look at all the religion. I mean, they're
Yes.
based on some doctrine, and whether you believe in
Some
religion or
writings,
not,
perhaps.
writings, right? So it's shaped from that. So
Hmm.
if now it's being shaped by something else, then that's, fast forward 50 years. I don't know. I mean, neither you or I will be alive in 50 years, maybe, but I don't
Yes.
know what will happen.
Right. Time will tell, right? So
Time will
you
tell.
mentioned here, too, Faisal, it says the more effort we put into shallow relationships, the less we'll have for deep relationships. Is that kind of a call to prioritize deep relationships and not get enamored by the shallow opportunities of a little AI, dopamine hits?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's look. We kind of observed this. We have been using algorithm and kind of this digital communication for a while now, 20,
Hmm.
30 years now, right? So look at what has happened with our social interaction
Yes.
utilizing different digital environment. It's easier to be somebody else, right? We talk about persona. It's easier to be some other personality takes over when you go to a virtual space, whether
Yes.
that's in the context of what you're posting in social media, how you're interacting with your text message, how you kind of like less sensitive, and whatever, emboldened to like throughout, kind of like throw out your innermost thought without being sensitive how other person may or may not feel. So we're desensitized ourselves with this
Mhm.
digital communication already. So the relationships already gotten shallower and shallower and shallower, right?
Yes.
Because when we are interacting face to face, and we can see each other in a similar space and whatnot, I think we're much more thoughtful, right? Because
Yes.
you can feel an energy, right? And we can
Yes.
see the reaction.
Yes.
So now if you have an engine that you're using, uh, I don't know, to interact, to write, to communicate, which has no feelings, then it will make the relationship, with yourself, meaning your relationship with yourself and your relationship with other, potentially a lot even more shallower.
Yeah. It's like people have thousands of followers but never have felt more lonely. People have all these likes but never felt less loved, right?
Sure.
And so it's nothing to just hit that little like button. It's another thing to call one human being up and say, "Hey, I just want to say I really appreciate you. That was really thoughtful. It meant a lot to me." But now we just do that in a like.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's
To that
easy,
point.
right?
It's
It's
easy.
easy.
Yeah, so and part of I think the allure to AI is, the rush to get bigger, better, faster, more, and all that. Yet you talk about how if everyone just wanted to get to the top of the mountain, the helicopter can take you there, right? But real adventurous folks make the decision to even risk their lives because they want to climb. And that's, I think, a great balance in pursuing AI as opposed to how fast can I do this or how great can I, get this, or how much work can I offload onto it so I don't have to. It's kind of the journey and the dance of you becoming better and growing together with your knowledge and use of AI, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the whole notion of what's humanity, right? I mean, you have to fundamentally ask yourself, do you want to protect human agency and humanity and the journey of humanity, or do you want to just get there, right? Whatever
Yeah.
that get there means, right?
Get there.
So
Yeah.
because it's like, when you're climbing a mountain, as an example, metaphorically, there is adversity, there's loss, there's
Risk.
fear, risk, right? All that what makes you human, and there's a
Yeah.
joy in that, right? And there's a
And it
learning
draws the
in that.
best out of you when you're facing all those things.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and it's you learn from that, the learning that we'll never forget if you just got there. And there is that saying that you learn less from your success, you learn more about from your
100%. Yeah.
loss, because loss is painful, right? I mean,
Yes.
failure is painful, and so, but it stays with you. It makes you a better person, right? So
Yes,
so
absolutely.
so so that's really what it is. So this is the question. This is the $1 trillion question for humanity, right? What do
Yes.
you want to be when I mean we're in a different trajectory, and we have never seen anything like this before.
Amazing. Well, Faisal, I'll end our interview with this quote that you have at the end, which is, if we approach AI with flexibility and humility, if we approach it in the spirit of service, if we detach from what harms and devote ourselves to what heals, ours is the earth and everything in it. And I think you're right on that. And I think you hit the nail on the head. So I applaud you for taking the thoughtful approach of writing this book. I think you're going to help a lot of people, and we're going to get this out to as many people as we can so that they can lean into AI to bring the best out of them.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Faisal.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are proudly sponsored by Lantrust Title Services. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and we'd love it if you'd share our podcast with your friends. Thanks a lot.